What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 133. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him... midweek here in Austin, Texas, getting ready to go on the road again. How you feeling, my friend?
Man, I am looking forward to this game. I think it's a real test. It's going to be a very difficult matchup for this club. We're coming off these 2 wins now. We have a little momentum going, and it's like, how are you going to respond to this type of team, being in that atmosphere, playing in just a very, very difficult place to play? Obviously, a team that has had our number for, since their inception. So I'm looking forward to all of that. Outside of soccer life, everything is going well, doing good, enjoying myself. But it's time to focus, time to break down St. Louis, time to get into this and, get everyone ready for this nationally televised matchup on Sunday. So that's exciting. So definitely want to put out a good performance for the world, the masses.
Yeah, absolutely. The second end of a little MLS doubleheader on Sunday afternoon. So first kind of break in the schedule here for our boys, just breaking from that Saturday that we've seen through the first 7 weeks of the season. And as we mentioned, I think on last week's midweek episode, coming up into May here, we're going to get 2 double game weeks. So it gets even tougher from a schedule perspective. Plenty to talk about today. Like you said, obviously the main focus is St. Louis and previewing this match. But we do have some big roster rule change news, kind of the next chapter in the rumors that had been bubbling to the surface a few weeks ago. We got to check in on Damien. We've got last business day and, of course, the nonsense at the end. But before we start tonight's episode, just want to remind everybody, if you have not yet, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us grow the show, as does subscribing to the YouTube channel if you are watching there. You can hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And, of course, on this episode, hit that thumbs up button, like the video, help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords, which you can also do by leaving a comment and joining in on the discussion. Any and all of that you do for us, we love you for it. Wash yourselves clean in the waters of the North End. Coming out of last weekend's match day, we did, of course, unsurprisingly, get the captain, Sebastian Driussi, onto the team of the match day. So that was maybe the least surprising thing to come on Monday afternoon. But I did notice before we started recording, Seba was up, his game winner, of course, was up for goal of the match day. And not only did it not win, it came in third out of the 4 choices. And that blew me away. Number one, because the voting power of the Austin FC fan base is mighty. We've seen that time and time again.
True.
But then the goal that won, which was, of course, all 4 goals in the poll are awesome. But Rui Diaz wins going away. And his goal came in a 5-0 blowout. I just, I'm biased here, but I think the voting public got it wrong.
I'm going to agree with you there. Obviously we have the biases coming into play here big time and everything, but I mean, a game winner at the death with that type of strike off a bouncing ball, just absolutely fantastic goals. So that's all right. We'll take third place in that situation. We'll take the 3 points as well. That's really all we care about.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into this week's match preview, taking on St. Louis City SC for the second time in this young season. Obviously, these 2 teams met last month at Q2 Stadium. Austin took the lead twice. St. Louis City responding in turn with equalizing goals each time. And, of course, that match ended 2-2 off the dramatic 3rd minute of stoppage time. Deflected goal by Cilio Pompeu. So now St. Louis City still remains undefeated in this head-to-head matchup. Austin, 1 draw, 2 losses, and of course no wins. So when we talked to Brad Stuver last week, he mentioned that his least favorite memory in his Austin FC tenure was this match at City Park, the 6-3 drubbing. Again, the 6-3 scoreline did not correctly indicate how much of a blowout that game was. 9 goals, but again, it was completely one-sided.
Utter domination. We got our asses completely handed to us in that stadium there. It was a brutal, brutal game. So I know that Brad brought that up when we spoke with him last week and everything. So he's definitely going to have a little more, motivation to get that bad taste out of his mouth, as most of these boys should. I know that's going to be a talking point in the locker room for Coach Wolf and his staff to bring this up to the dudes. Like, hey, these dudes thoroughly embarrassed this last game. I still have nightmares of this Pompeo goal. Because it was just a heartbreaker. It was an absolute crusher and everything like that. So, this is, man, they find themselves now in an interesting situation with their lineup, who's available, their current record. They're sitting on 1 win, I believe 5 draws. So it's an interesting situation for them right now. And I know that they're going to be looking to, rebound from this draw that they just had versus FC Dallas and get us again, as they have. They have our number right now. Their style of play is really tough for us to handle. We have not figured it out yet. I was actually perusing the internets the other night, and there was a really good meme video up of McConaughey with Leo, and they're doing this and everything like that, and they're chatting about how many times you pass back to the keeper and everything like that. And St. Louis obviously was Leo in that situation, having a good time like that. So, I hate these dudes. I know you fucking hate them. I know you don't believe in them. And they still don't got shit to show for it right now for all of their hard work thus far into their short career.
Yeah. Well, I'm just stuck on you saying rebound. I know when you run your mouth as much as we do, sometimes you mispronounce words. Of course, our pronunciations of certain things are horrible sometimes, but I've never heard you say rebound.
This isn't basketball. It's not basketball. You got to put a little je ne sais quoi on it there, Come on, step your game up, bro.
Hey, look, when it comes to this team, right, in their start this season, I think you're right on point. It's far from the fairy tale start that they had last year, right? Which, of course, we've talked about plenty on this podcast. And to your point, even though they only have 1 win through their first 7 matches, they've picked up those 5 draws. So they're right in touch with that playoff line. They're just a point back of Austin. So just a point separating 8th from 11th. And I think the biggest reason for City's struggles or sluggish start, whatever you want to call it, right, is being without Edward Leuven since we played on March 9th. Hamstring issue has kept him out. I heard Landon Cotham actually told me today he heard that while he was Leuven, that is, was listed on the official injury report with that hamstring injury last week, saying that's why he missed the match against FC Dallas. Landon said he heard that there was a personal issue that was actually the reason that kept him away last week. And so either way, we got them posting on their team social accounts footage of both Leuven and Joachim Nielsen, who's a starter for them on their back line. Both of those guys participating in contact portions of practice. So I think we probably see those guys come into the weekend listed as questionable. I expect both of them to play, but I certainly don't expect Leuven, coming from a month off, to play 90. And man, the less we can see of Edward Leuven on the field, the better for us.
Absolutely. And I mean, you see the parallels between them being without their 10, us being without our 10 earlier in this season. Leuven is obviously the engine that makes everything go for this team. He is a physical force in the midfield that honestly, there are just maybe even less than a handful of players in this league right now who are as skilled as him, as large as him, as able to get their teammates involved while still being a threat to score once he's basically crossed half field, because he's got such a powerful shot. So he is the guy who makes everything go for them. He feeds Klaus like a newborn child all the time, just like open up the airplane, here comes the ball, so he's getting that ball to Klaus, who is obviously an incredible talent as well. Another very large individual for a soccer player who knows how to use his body and has given us absolute fits on that back line. Like, he has spanked Julio more often than not. And I'm just looking to not see him for 90 minutes, hopefully 60. Like if he's at that point in his progression, obviously the FOTMOB injuries with the timelines and things like that can be a bit misleading. We were excited looking at it going down to the Spurs game, talking about like, oh, he's not going to play, had him out till late April, but here he is, and we're going to have to deal with it. We're going to have to find ways to corral him. I don't know if that means Johan Valencia is going to get the start here, just to be a little more defensive minded. If we're going to try to, sit in that horseshoe and walk out of there with a point, which I'd be incredibly satisfied with. Because this is a buzzsaw of a place to play. It's a very difficult place to play, and everyone who's rooted for this team knows that. So we're going to need a top-notch performance. And the pod. If you're a listener, we bring the positivity. I was telling you, nothing is ever a certainty. If you ever think a game is a certainty that we absolutely cannot win, I encourage you to bet every single thing you own on it: your house, your dog, your car. Because if it's a certainty, then why would you not do it? So here we look for, maybe the improbables to find ways that we can squeak out wins and things of that nature. So stay tuned. Maybe I will be predicting a draw here.
Ooh, we'll see. One thing I did, and just to maybe leave Lewin behind here in a moment, I'm still pretty proud of my comparison from the first match this season between these two teams, where I called Leuven 2022 Diego Fagundes, but make him 6'2", 200.
Yeah, give him steroids and Hulk juice.
Yeah, and more consistency season to season. Like Leuven is that level all the time, whereas that was a career high season for our boy. And look, now that we will be essentially a quarter of the way through the season after this match. We're just over 20% of the way through at this point. I think it's okay to now start to put a little bit of emphasis on some of the data we've been given from all of these teams across the league, right? So I think some trends here are just the same for St. Louis. They're the same in your face, pressing, direct style team that we saw last year. They're second in MLS in sequence time. And you can get these stats from Opta Analysts. The sequences are defined as passages of play which belong to one team and are ended by defensive actions, stoppages in play, or a shot. So sequence time is the average time per sequence. So they are the second quickest team in sequence time, just 5.6 seconds per sequence. And they've got the second fewest passes per sequence at 2.67, third in direct speed, which is a measure of how quickly a team progresses the ball upfield in meters per second. So third in direct speed at 2.24 meters, just behind LAFC and the Philly Union. So this is a very dangerous team still. They can turn a game. They can turn momentum in an instant. And I kind of expect Austin to do what we saw a little bit of in the first match, is let them play with the ball, because they will turn it back over. And if you can be very compact in the middle and make them try to play down the flanks, I think that's where you're going to maybe find an advantage here, even on the road. And the fact that now, we didn't have Seba for that last game, and we've seen what bringing, you didn't need to see the last two games to know that having the best player on the team healthy, helps out a little bit. But not just the goal scoring, not just the chance creation, but you talked about it too, the defensive pressure, etc. Driussi's doing everything right now. I think it's shades of 2022 Driussi with all the intangibles. And I think if we have him out there playing like this, we got a chance against almost anybody.
I'm right there with you. This has been the number 10 that we have been waiting for, that we have been calling for. Also, you see the maturity a bit more too. When was the last time you saw him sitting down on the pitch upset? Obviously, we've been in, we're coming off these 2 wins with him playing really exceptionally, but still there's ups and downs, ebbs and flows to all kinds of games. You saw in last games, in the last matchup, where I thought he could have had a better attempt on net off a bouncing ball, and he didn't get frustrated. He didn't let it get to him, so I am really, really excited about the level of play that he's bringing right now. And he's going to have a great game, because like you said, this team, they can hit you in a flash, hit you in an instant. and boom, you're down 1-0, as we know well enough. But then, sometimes six goals come at you with these boys. So,
Yeah.
the keys to the game for me, I know you're on the match preview today and everything like that, but I like where you're coming from with letting them play with the ball a little bit, allowing them to have possession, just keeping them in front. You want to keep them in front. A team with this type of speed, you got to keep them in front of you as best you can. Corralling Klaus, who is now going to be at full strength when he was not in the first matchup that we had with this club. So those are my two keys to the game right there, just to make sure that we are able to keep this ball in front of us as best to our ability and make sure that Klaus doesn't go off on us as Leuven is feeding him the ball, depending on how much time we see out of their number 10.
Well, let's turn the attention to the good guys here. And we actually got a Wednesday media availability at Q2 Stadium. I believe there is some sort of event that the team and the club is hosting on Thursday. So, Wednesday episode with some press conference quotes. We'll take that.
Yeah,
so
let's start.
Let's start with Coach. You highlighted some keys, of course, to the game, the upcoming opponent. Gave us a little injury update, which is interesting. Let's go through some of this here. He said about St. Louis, it's another opportunity to go up against the very best. St. Louis is very strong at home. We've watched their games. The game here was very competitive. Obviously, we have some players that are back a little bit now, a little more healthy. The important part is the mentality of how you go into that game. And I agree. You're going to have to go up against one of the, we pride ourselves on our environment that we create as fans. St. Louis is in the same boat, man. Like I would say they're a top 5 environment in the league, hands down. And we saw what happened the first time we tried to go there and roll the ball out and play. It was the most goals we've ever given up in a single game. So I think that mentality part, I've been satisfied, to your point, right? That mentality that we've seen from Seba on down. And we've also talked about it over the last couple episodes that even when the wins weren't coming, the fight and that mentality was more staunch with this group than it was last season, at least in this 7-game sample that we've been given.
You got to believe, you got to believe that you can go in there and get this job done. So I hope that these dudes got their minds right and are ready to roll.
Yeah, so Coach continued here, giving an injury update. Of course, Leo and John are the two guys that we're waiting on here. He said Leo continues to do work away from the group. He gets a little bit of work in with us at the beginning of training sessions. And then Kolmanich has been in full the last day or two. So there's hope that he can be available for the weekend, which will be good. Give us a boost, give him a boost at the fullback position. Man, if Kolmanich is ready to go, even off the bench, that's awesome because, having 4 fullbacks is better than 3. And guess what? We've got some spots on the bench that he can take. So I don't know if he gets in. I expect him, based off this quote, to be available for selection. And I would probably lean towards probably no minutes, give him an extra week unless there's an emergency here. But that's great news, man, because last week he said 2 to 3 weeks. So maybe it ends up being more on that timeline. But the fact that he's been in full training the last 2 days is very positive news.
Absolutely. And playing on Sunday, give him an extra day there. That's also really positive. So, I'll see how it shakes out. We'll all see how it shakes out come Sunday if he's on the bench. But like you said, we haven't filled this bench out in some time. So
Yeah.
It's good to have bodies.
Yeah.
And, I don't necessarily know if this is a great matchup for Hector on the back line there, just given the style of play that they're going to try to impose on us. So being able to have Kolmanich ready to go, if that is the case, that's good news right at the start of the week here.
I think this is more good news too, because before he goes in to talk about Emmy, he says that CJ has done great with ATX2, so he's back in with us training. So maybe not this week, but maybe in the coming matches, we're seeing CJ Fodre back on that bench for the first team, which again, I don't know, man, if he's not going to play more than spot minutes here or there, I would love to see him bounce between the two teams because CJ needs minutes, right? Yes. We know about the talent, but he needs to continue to develop. So it's just another storyline to continue following. And then he was asked by Phil West about Emiliano Rigoni, just Phil, multiple questions about the wing position here, really pressing Coach Wolf. And I think we got some good stuff out of it. He said, I think opportunity has to come through performance. So I think Rigoni will get his chance when he gets his chance. It's a very Wolf-esque quote there. He can play as a winger, as an attacking mid, as a forward. But again, the team is performing well. I have to do things and make decisions that give us the best chance to win games. And at the end of the day, man, we've got 2 wins and 0 minutes in those games from Emiliano Rigoni. So we know that he's not banished from the field forever with this team.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't expect to see him playing meaningful minutes anytime soon, barring injury.
I do not either, particularly with the way that Owen's been playing. There was a great graphic that you threw up earlier today about
we'll get there.
Some per 90 stats that I'm excited to get into. And Owen's really emerged, man, and he's played exceptional on that wing position. And Rigoni's had every chance in the world. And we're rolling now a little bit. So sorry, man. It passes you by if it passes you by, brother.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully he's being a model teammate and still busting his ass in practice and doing all the right things.
I mean, we've never heard anything bad out of any sort of camp that he's been a shit teammate.
That's a good point.
Or that he's been somebody who's a dick in practice or anything along those lines. So good.
Yeah. And then when we'll get into this after the match preview, I'm very excited to talk about this. Phil also asked about the new roster rules. And Coach said, new roster rules have been in discussion for a while. We're just waiting to hear how it finalizes and how it falls. That'll be something for Roto. I certainly hope so. We've got some roster spots that are open, and it would be nice to bring in some quality and some guys to give us depth and the quality that's needed inside of this league. So we'll get to that in a moment, Eve. But you also mentioned how well Owen Wolf has been playing, and he spoke when asked about the winger position. It doesn't sound like we're going to see that pairing of Obrian and Owen Wolf being broken up anytime soon. He said of Owen, he's a responsible player. He's very secure, probably one of our smarter players. That's why he will continue to play. And look, man, I know, right? Both Wolves have very vocal detractors. And we've always kind of been about separating those two, especially with Owen. The name on the back of the jersey is not what should be paid attention to here if you're actually watching this kid play and paying attention to the results. So let's pull up some of these stats that you were kind of hinting at that we compiled earlier this morning. Again, checking out the stats being through a fifth of the season now. I think it's appropriate to be having some takeaways here. So if you look at these per 90 stats for us in FC so far this season, we'll start with progressive passes per 90 minutes. You see Sebastian Driussi up there at the top, 10.3 progressive passes per 90 minutes. Then Hector Jimenez, number 2, 9.05. And then third, Owen Wolf, 5.79. So you see a pretty big drop off there between Driussi and Jimenez to Wolf and the rest of the field. But if we continue going through these stats here, you go to progressive passes received. And this is very interesting to me because you see Hader Obrian, 9.42. Then Owen Wolf, 8.95. Emiliano Rigoni, 7.14. So Rigoni receiving those progressive passes, not doing much with them. But the fact that Owen Wolf is top 3 on the team in progressive passes per 90 minutes and progressive passes received per 90 minutes, to me that says this kid is a key cog in what we're doing offensively, and specifically over the last 2 games where he's played the biggest role that we've seen to date this season. I've seen it, just a couple fans putting stuff out there like Owen shouldn't, still. Again, I think the argument in the past held a little bit more weight than it does right now because this kid has taken a jump this year.
I mean, look at how our offense has performed since he's been slotted into the starting lineup. If you just crossed his face out and removed his name and had that number up there, I'd be like, oh, who's number 2? And come on, man. It's unbelievable, and to Rigoni up there, we knew we were forcing him the ball earlier in the season. We were trying to get that man the ball all the time and give him all types of opportunities. And I don't want to get lost. I don't want Obrian to get lost in this conversation about Owen right now because he as well has really ramped it up. And you see here that we're also feeding him the ball up the wings.
He's the target.
yep, we are trying to push that ball up the field, up the wings and everything. And this is a great way to highlight all of that. And yes, I mean, we're 21%, 22, whatever into the season right now and everything. Yeah. So like these hold weight, like these hold actual weight. And like, these are things that you can look at where like you can remove your bias and just see the actual stats, the numbers, how it's playing out. And you just can see the entire difference on the field with Owen in the starting lineup now.
The numbers, the figures.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just for the uninitiated, a progressive pass is a completed pass that moves the ball towards the opponent's goal line at least 10 yards from his furthest point in the last 6 passes, or any completed pass into the penalty area. And this stat excludes passes from the defending 40% of the pitch. So again, I think those definitions are important to continue to include and talk about when we look at these type of metrics. Just because, again, for guys like you and I, who aren't soccer heads by nature, right? I think it's a good reminder. So if we continue through these, just a couple more slides. Key passes per 90 minutes. Jean Kolmanich up top, 2.08. Then Owen Wolf, 1.32, and Alex Ring, 1.29 in terms of the key passes per 90 minutes there. And again, you see that there is a name in all of these charts.
Man, it's just funny. But let's talk about Alex just so we don't get absolutely skewered here.
Okay.
We talked about his progressive passes, his ability to have these nice little one-touch plays, playing people into space, like things like that. So it's really encouraging to see Alex up there, because one thing we noticed from this last game was that he was way more advanced and really being a target point in the more attacking third of these of the games that we've seen the last 2 weeks. So that's great to see from Alex as well. And Kolmanich, I would have never guessed that.
Yeah. So key passes are just passes that directly lead to a shot. So it's essentially like assisted shots, right? And you mentioned Alex Ring, like seeing him on the replay kind of cycling in with Seba and with Diego Rubio, like that little triangle of those 3 guys, I think has been, again, another key to unlocking some offensive potency for this team. The final slide I got here, he is shot creating actions per 90. And oh boy, look who's up top. Owen Wolf, 3.68 shot creating actions per 90. Sebastian Driussi second at 3.01. And then Jean Kolmanich, 2.88. So again, man, in all of these key offensive metrics, Owen Wolf is the mainstay.
He's been awesome, man. And this is just gets me really excited to get Kolmanich back, because now you have a healthy Seba. Now we have Owen in that position that he's really unlocked this offense, and you see the contributions that Kolmanich is making. And man, that just makes me want him to be healthy, but ready to go, baby. Let's go.
Yep, absolutely. Shot creating actions, just for good measure, are the 2 offensive actions directly leading to a shot, such as passes, take-ons, and drawing fouls. So there, just wanted to share those that we dug up today. I was just surprised myself to see Owen up there, because I'm not surprised to see him here or there, but in all of those metrics, again, it just highlights even more heavily than I thought that Owen has, again, taken that step this year. So I'm hoping that he can continue to keep up this confidence, kind of keep that clear head that he seems to have when he's got that more defined area on the pitch, rather than being central, where I think we've seen him get a little bit, I mean, for lack of a better term, a little bit lost at times.
And composure wise, you know, he's been in this league now for a minute. You know, the game's starting to slow down for him a little bit. So not getting overwhelmed with what he needs to do and just doing his job. And like, that's why you see Kolmanich on those figures as well. That's why you see Hector up there doing your job, playing your part. Like that's great to see, man. I'm really excited about that stuff.
So, you know, I know you already said it this episode, right? Positive pod. We always try to keep the vibes high here. And like, I don't want to be a downer, but I think there's just like, let's also keep the wide view that there's potentially a cold reality that could set in over the next couple of weeks, because look, man, the last 2 weeks were awesome.
Yeah.
In the last 40 minutes of that San Jose game, we had twice as many goals than we've had shots on target in 180 minutes of road games this year.
Yeah.
So like going back on the road is a little bit nerve-wracking, because again, we've been so toothless on the road, And this is where you could think against a team like St. Louis, maybe there's, tactical changes where we're not as aggressive offensively once again. And like, you need some of that, right? You have to
Yes.
adjust for the
Yes.
opponent game to game, for the personnel. But I think that's the thing I'm looking at from this match. Most important to me, again, you want to win every match. And I'd be much more happy with a draw than a loss, of course. But I want to see that fight offensively. I don't want to see us conceding immediately that we're trying to grind out a 0-0 draw, right? Because like there's times where you can bunker like that and try to hit a team on the counter.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle and Orlando was not that.
No.
We had none of that. And again, we've got 10 back here. We had him for Orlando in a limited capacity. He looks so much better last weekend than he did in that Orlando City match. So again, I have hopes for sure. And I can see Austin FC winning this match, drawing this match. But again, like we are not going to be the favorites coming in here. And I'm a little bit wary. I'm trying to ready myself to be a little bit more frustrated, right? Coming down off of the high of the last 14 days.
Absolutely. This is a huge challenge. This is a really difficult place to play. I've said it 4 or 5 times. I won't say it again, y'all. I apologize. But we're going to have to look, every game is its own unique storyline, its own little book. So like, how are we going to come out? Because even in our wins from these last 2 games, we have come out pretty flat in regard to getting some production towards the end of the goal there. Like I guess
the finishing.
Flat is the wrong term. I want to rescind that from the record.
Okay.
Let me rebound here. Flat was the wrong word there. We have not seen the fruit from our labors of being aggressive, right? And how this game plays out in the first half in regard to how we are going to come out and approach this. I do not think we're going to have the same exact game plan from Seattle because we are incredibly limited at that point in time. This lineup has evolved. It has changed. So now a healthy 10 is back into rotation. Now we see these 2 wingers on the sides really being impactful, moving the ball up the field. So I want to see how this first 45 minutes goes. We're going to have to feel it out a little bit. And again, to your point earlier, keeping them in front, letting them have a little bit of possession, and maybe we can hit them on the counter. Because again, you go 0-0 for the first 45 minutes in this matchup, they're going to be feeling how we feel when we're 0-0 at home and being the better team. So like you can catch them on a counter at some point in time. And the thing is now we actually have speed to hit you on the counter. Before that was not really something that we possessed. G is not going to blow by you. Bergoni is not going to gas by you. Finley has a little bit of pep, but it's not like Hot Air Obrian, who we clocked at 22.5 miles an hour last week. So like there's some real speed and potential to hit these dudes on the counter. And like you said with the stats earlier about how they want to hit you so fast, that does leave you a little bit susceptible to being hit on the counter after that because you're pushed up. You got guys trying to get into the action. So I will be keeping a close eye as to how we come out to this game, particularly with the lineup. I think the lineup will be a foreshadowing of how we're actually going to approach this team. And then we go from there, man, and we got 90 minutes to go ahead and get the job done. And even though I'm not very confident in it, I'm going to reach deep down into my Verde blood and find a way for us to get a win here. And I think it's a 2-1 dub.
Ooh, okay. 2-1 Austin for E. I am going to also reach into my coffers of positivity. Not quite as deep as you. I've got a 1-1 draw here.
Take it.
And yeah, I would absolutely take that. No, I don't have a lineup graphic prepared this week, E, but we saw the same 11 twice in a row. Do you think we see any changes here against St. Louis?
That's a great question. I already hinted maybe you see Valencia again. I don't like it, but I'm with you there. I'm just saying if I'm pontificating here, trying to find something like maybe it's Valencia. But I say roll the same 11. Let's do it. Let's put it out there. This is clearly our best lineup. Like we found some continuity. Let's keep riding it.
I think the only change that I could see right now. Because again, I could see Valencia for sure. I could see him being in that graphic an hour before the match on Sunday. But I think Biro maybe for Jimenez, maybe.
I like that. I like that.
Just because, again, Hector has already given us more, probably twice as much as I ever expected out of him this season.
Absolutely.
Maybe even more than that.
Absolutely.
So, I don't know. Again, that's probably a high performance and coaching staff decision, of course. But I think fullback is where my eye goes to in terms of a potential change here.
And you know what? If we really believe in ourselves and if we're buying into the fact that we have found a little bit of a secret sauce recipe, then you got to go with what has been working here. Yeah. So I like the Biro though. I think this is a game where he could really be impactful. Like this is a game that like it's gonna be fast paced. Aziel Jackson will probably die 6 or 7 times, resuscitate himself. So I like the Biro call there because I do think that this is a poor matchup for Hector, just the way that they play. And that's not a shot at Hector because he has been awesome in his spot work. And I just want to also preface this. If it doesn't matter when we win that the coach needs to be fired, then it shouldn't matter when we lose. So like keep that to yourselves if that's going to be the first thing you say, because we got to pump the brakes. All right. So that's just, let's get that out of the way.
It is out of the way. Well, and you bring up Biro there. We did get Biro at media availability today, before we get into these rule changes and the discussion around that. I just wanted to share this quote with you.
He's fun.
Because we know there's that second Guilherme Biro down in Brazil that the league site has him confused with. So he got asked about it today. He said, I've heard a lot about the other Guilherme Biro, but I was born first. So I'm the real Guilherme Biro.
Facts.
Love it.
This kid's fun, man. Yeah. You know what? Put him in the lineup. Give it to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, the rest of that, you can go check out the rest of his quotes on our socials. Got a couple more graphics from Biro there, but wanted to move on here. 2-1 win for E, 1-1 draw for me. And I would take it if we get 3 points, boys. So bring it home. Let's talk about these roster rule changes here. The Athletic this morning, Paul Tenorio reporting further on the rumored roster rule changes. We talked about the potential decoupling of designated player slots from the U22 initiative slots. And he says on Tuesday, MLS soccer owners voted on several rule changes that are expected to be implemented for the upcoming summer transfer window. I believe it hinges on passing a vote with the MLS Players Association, but there are 3 changes in the works here. And the first one does have to do with the DP slots and the U22 initiative. And this is, I think, the biggest change from a rules standpoint, right? Your roster construction here. It's going to impact how teams spend on those special roster slots. So under these new rules, some teams can choose whether they want to have 3 senior designated player slots and 3 U22 initiative slots, or if you choose to just have 2 designated players, like a Charlotte, like a St. Louis City, right? Then you can have 4 U22 initiative slots and an additional $2 million in GAM for your salary cap, which is, I don't envy any of these sporting directors, general managers, what have you, when having to make that decision, because that goes all the way up to your ownership, how much they're willing to spend. I'm sure there's going to be multiple PowerPoints presented about here's what it looks like for your pocketbook if we go this way and the other direction. And it's just, it makes what is already the Wild West of salary caps and roster rules for any league around the world, it just enhances that like twofold. That like now teams can choose, like there's just like, I don't know, man. It's like choose your own adventure.
I mean, look, it's got legs to me. We shit on MLS. We shit on MLS for a lot of really bad decisions, and God, we were pissed last week when we couldn't watch Trafico. Paid for Apple TV.
No, we don't pay for Apple TV.
Just to be at the game. Like whatever. I digress. I think it's got some legs here, man. Like, it gives some flexibility, a little more creativity with how you want to build this lineup. You got a little bit of a youth movement going. How are you going to allocate that GAM? So, it's a step in the right direction. And this will constantly evolve and constantly change as the league changes, the league hopefully grows. So it's a process, but I think this is a real step in the right direction for the league as a whole.
I agree. And again, it's just such it's going to be so intriguing to watch how Roto and all of the other teams navigate these new rules, because those U22 spots, right? They can't make more than the max budget charge, right? So you're not paying any U22s more than $700K, but they only count for $200K against the salary cap. And U22 initiative slots have no restrictions in terms of acquisition costs. So transfer fees, loan fees, you can spend what you want to bring these young kids in. And as long as they're younger than 22 in that league year, right, you can sign them for 3 years. So again, that just helps the development profile of the league. And again, gives teams more flexibility to build strong rosters how they see fit. And I think that's great, because having the ability to use a different model than an LAFC, right? If LAFC can bring in guys like Bale and Giroud, and Miami's got half of Barcelona's team from a decade ago, right? Maybe not all teams can afford that type of stuff. So giving this type of choice, there's just, again, the conversation will continue about especially this rule change. But again, I'm a fan of it.
I am definitely a fan of it. And I know that you had on one of the earlier slides with Coach Wolf there that, this has been in talks, it has been in discussion. And I would assume that Mr. Burrell was aware and privy to what was going. Man, I'm busting out all the words today, bro. I don't know what. Ate some alphabet soup this morning or something. They got all the consonants and vowels all juiced up. Look, man, it's been in the works. I would assume that Rodolfo Burrell has not been in the dark about this, and he's got a plan.
Yeah, I agree. The other two rule changes, second here, you're going from 1 contract buyout per season to 2, which again might not seem like a big thing, but that's huge. And it's not just for Austin, right? Because now if you got 2 buyouts in the summer, you can overhaul this roster in a larger manner than we already assumed you could do. And every year going forward, and I think going forward after this summer transfer window, I think it's more important to look at the wider view for the league, because that's, I think, one of the biggest obstacles for MLS rosters to get out from under bad contracts that don't work out, like an Emiliano Rigoni, right? Yep. If you only have that 1 buyout, you're really saving it, because you might need it later on for an Amro Tarek or somebody like that, right? So being able to adding this second buyout just gives teams across the league so much more flexibility to fix mistakes and again, to fix your salary cap, fix your budget sheet in a more timely manner.
And for a long time, this league has been known as the retirement league. You get guys over here, and who knows what dudes are going to come over here and mail it in. I bet you every single team could bring up countless examples of players that they've had who have come over here, gotten those paychecks, not really giving a shit about the team. Gareth Bale.
Luis Muriel, bastard.
So this is great, man. It's just more flexibility, more ability to have a global reach, bring talent in with the U22 initiative that you're talking about now, younger talent. Hopefully having them stay around a little longer. Obviously, when you're very good, you're very talented, you're moving all over the place and everything. This is how it works. But, I just want to say kudos to the league and Players Association. Get this right.
Pass this shit.
Pass this shit.
Yeah. The third and final rule change here is more GAM for transfers here. Under the current rules, MLS teams can convert right about 1.2 million of transfer or loan revenue into general allocation money. So under the new rules, teams will be able to convert up to 3 million per year in transfer or loan revenue into GAM. So the example that Tenorio gives in his article is the Chicago Fire last year selling Gaga Slonina to Chelsea for 10 million. They could max out their GAM benefit from that transaction at that $1.2 million figure. But then if a team, let's say Austin, right, down the road sold 2 players for a total of $4 million, they could grab 1.2 in GAM from each of those sales. So under this new rule, teams that sell players have the same maximum amount of GAM that they can reach per year across all of their sales. So again, standardizing that process seems like a positive in my eyes.
I agree. And it kind of goes hand in hand, right, with like trying to boost up this U22 initiative a little bit where you're getting younger talent in and then you're moving on from them later.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So again, I think that is all good to great stuff for the league and also for Austin FC here in the summer window. It makes it that much more intriguing. You know, it's like you found a secret menu under the regular menu that Roto put out on our table.
That's right. You know, we usually celebrate Pidgemas on Christmas at your place, but I think honestly we might have to do summer Pidgemas at some point in time here, because this is something that I am like really looking forward to. This is going to be exciting, man. It's going to be good for the league. You know, you're bringing talent in if you can, and like that's just good. It's good business.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you. So we move on from that, and we actually did have a midweek game for Louisville. So let's check in on
the best keeper in the world.
Damian Loss and Louisville City taking on Charleston Battery on Tuesday night, and Louisville City for the first time this season falls 3-2. Damian Loss did pick up a yellow card. I'm sorry, Damian. It was a yellow card. We know how fiery he can be. He also saved a penalty, and then Charleston followed up on the rebound and put that home, I believe. But again, 6 saves, including a PK save. I think this is a small bump in the road here for Damian and Louisville. They are now in 3rd place in the Eastern Conference off tiebreakers, but their 12 points is still tied with both Charleston and Detroit City FC for top in USL. So a minor hiccup, I think, in an otherwise great start to the year.
Lost to a quality club. Sounds like a good game. I'm going to go ahead and blame this on the random dude who showed up in our subreddit and was like, "Hey, I'm a reporter, and Damian Loss is a crazy person."
Dude, he was totally responding to that game. It was like, this guy saw Damian Loss for the first time and decided to judge him off 20 minutes. It's like, come on, man.
Jeez.
All right, let's jump into last business day here, because we've got a home match this Friday at Palmer Field, 8 p.m., and it is a double St. Louis City weekend for us. FCito welcoming St. Louis City to town. City 2 has played 4 matches. They have 1 win, 2 draws, and 1 loss for a total of 6 points. So they have won 1 of their 2 penalty shootouts so far this season. And FCito, of course, just 2 regular season matches played so far. So games in hand. The majority of the Western Conference already has 4 matches played. 4 other teams have 3 matches played, Austin FC 2 and Loons 2, the only sides with only 2 matches played. Of course, their match was postponed due to the Open Cup fixtures. So when you take a look at this City 2 side, they have a lot of turnover, of course, as a number of these clubs do. I was not able to go through their roster and find anybody I recognize from last year. You know, the days of Aziel Jackson gracing City 2 with his presence are long gone. The one guy that I do want to have an eye on Friday night, if he is down with the 2 team, is Jose Kojima, who was their first round draft pick this past year, and actually scored, I believe, the game winner in their first CCC match earlier this season. So Kojima, a talented player, and he has gotten out there at times for City 2 so far this year. So that's who I'm looking at on Friday night from the opponent.
Okay. Yeah. I see a couple names I might recognize. McSorley here. I think I
think you're right. Also, I think Akil Watts was with him.
Akil Watts. Yep. So, you know, you kind of got to get this first game under your belt with these Next Pro games to learn who's really impactful and who's, not really, who's just on the roster here. But, a good matchup. We had some good games with them last year. Obviously, Aziel Jackson was dying on the field multiple times. Got to get the job done here. I'm interested to see this game. It's been an interesting start for this Austin FC2 team. we've had some rough patches here. We've
Mm-hmm.
had Pignot deal with some disciplinary issues. Oh,
Sorry, I was just trying to think. He sat for his suspension last game, so he should be back this week.
Yes. So, at this point, he's obviously one of our most impactful players, one of our best players. So it's going to be good to have him back out there.
I agree. And I think, we saw Shaik Toure and Bobasi Brahwanga on the bench at Houston Dynamo 2 last time out. I'm going to be interested to see if those guys can crack the starting 11 here. I would imagine that they do. But again, we've certainly got some positional battles here. And I'm also going to be paying attention to that lineup graphic. And if we see Ruben Bonachera active for the first time after we got our first sighting of him in the stands in Houston from our buddy Logan.
Shout out Logan. Yeah, great eye.
Absolutely. So Friday night, 8 p.m. at the pitch. How much is Austin FC2 winning by this weekend?
Whew. I think the verdict is still out with our defense. And it was a good win versus Houston because that was a tight contest and very heated. So I think we got a little positive momentum here. We get this red card for Pignot out of the way, 4-0 in the rear view. I'm going to go ahead and say 2-1 again. So 2-2-1s.
All right. I like it. 2-2-1s for this weekend. Look, man, we're back home where, like you mentioned, it hasn't been great so far, right? The loss, the red card, shorthanded loss against Tacoma, the penalty shootout loss to 4-0 in the Open Cup. So looking to rebound here, right? I'm going to go 2-0. 2-0 FC2. We'll get a little shutout for our boy Marcus Alstrup, that CB pairing of Sal and Tony Gomez. So looking forward to that one this Friday night for sure.
Very much so.
I did just want to note the GA Cup results. The U15s took that tough loss 5-0 on Apple TV at the hands of the Valencia U15s. Valencia swept the field. They won the whole thing. So, again, you went down to the champs, boys. So, again, nothing to be ashamed about there. So, did just wanted to mention that to close out last business day. Let's go ahead, and get into some of the nonsense this week because we teased it on Sunday's episode. The nonsense was pretty friendly to the North End this week. The North End podcast in the Verde Best Ball League gets the first victory of the season behind 54 points from the squad. No thanks to our keepers who gave us 0 once again. Pedro Galese on a bye, Andre Blake out with the concussion, still get the dub on the week, making up some ground. I mean, the big thing to me is we put a big gap between us and Texas Ring of Fire there for the spoon. I put return to sender on that spoon, right back to Harry.
I was actually looking at giant wooden spoons on Amazon the other day. We were driving that Spurs game.
Yeah.
I still got to get one.
Yeah, get that engraved or something. So you can see Phil West, Verde all day, keeps that overall lead, increases it from 4 to 5 points over our boys at the Verde Pendant. Moon Tower now in outright third, a point ahead of We Are Austin TV in fourth. So again, we are 20% of the way through the best ball season. Long way to go here. So I expect the North End to keep climbing.
Well, as do I. Let's go, baby.
All right. And then we'll talk about the bets, And, when you sprinkle a little half unit on Driussi to brace at plus 1,600, we would have had to work real hard to not profit last week.
Yeah.
So that coming through, that last minute goal from Seba gives us the Austin plus 120 victory. That gives us the Driussi plus 1,600, half a unit. Obviously, he had already cleaned up the plus 220 with that penalty kick goal. We miss on the Galaxy plus a half goal. They lose 2-1. We did hit on the Whitecaps minus 1.5 at home at plus 135. They win that match 4-0. And then in terms of the goal scorers, we get a goal from Christian Benteke as well. And then I believe we got, I forget who else we got. It was either, I think it might have been Almada. I can pull it up here. I know that the calculation I did this morning, was plus 7.35 units on the week. So we are 2.36 units in the black on the season. And I think that's a new record for us.
It's awesome. The revamped schedule, man. We're cooking now.
We'll see how long it lasts, but again, we have stayed above water much longer than we did on our maiden voyage here. So taking a look at some of the offerings for week 8 here. Again, not locking any of these in until Friday evening after that official injury report is released. You can always catch the picks articles on Friday evening at thenorthendpodcast.com. So I know right here, we were looking at Cincinnati on the road, going to take on Montreal, plus 175 there. Again, I want to see that injury report. If we're missing something, then maybe we reconsider. But since he was a full go last week, and if they are here against Montreal, I really like that one. I know you called that one out.
I definitely like it if they're a full go. So keep an eye on that injury report and we'll get ready to lock it in. You know, they're coming off that Red Bulls loss, but like Red Bulls is a very good team at the top of the table.
Well, speaking of Red Bulls, they are hosting Chicago Fire, and you know, they're heavy favorites here, as they should be. So maybe we take a look at Red Bull minus 1.5, similar to that Whitecaps bet that we put in last week, plus 165 at minus 1.5 goals.
I'm all over this team, man. I'm completely bought in. Like we talked about, what are they, 11, 12 consecutive seasons in the playoffs?
Yeah, something like that. I think it's the most in North American sport or the United States pro sports, major sports.
It's been lost in the conversation with that team, but they continuously put out a good product, and now they got some real studs over there. So I like that a lot too.
Yeah, and then I know you also called this one out. Seattle getting a little bit more healthy here. Dallas, not necessarily so. Seattle in Dallas this weekend, plus 150. They're actually favored. I think Dallas is plus 180 here at home. So obviously we need to see the injury reports for both of those teams, but I like that shout from you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what, they put up 5 goals last week?
So it really took the lid off that goal.
Yeah, absolute thrashing. So, you know, that's always got to feel good for a club, always got to feel good for the guys, particularly with the way that they started this season. So I'm always happy to bet against Dallas.
Yeah. I've got a number of goal props here. Don't need to list them all off, but I will say Sebastian Driussi plus 280 to score against St. Louis. We know that's going in unless, we'll knock on wood here, unless he shows up on that injury report. That one is we're putting a unit on that.
We're going to need it. So
yeah, we are.
We're definitely going to need it.
We are. All right. Anything else for you before we get out of here?
Let's do this shit.
That is the deep analysis you come to the North End for, my friends. That'll do it for us here on episode 133 of the North End Podcast. Again, you can visit thenorthendpodcast.com for our match preview articles, our weekly picks, and access to those roster and salary cap spreadsheets, which, again, we are under a month until salary cap Christmas. So big updates coming there. Going to add a couple more sheets in the coming weeks as well. So northendpodcast.com, your one-stop shop for all your Austin FC roster questions and queries. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody. Enjoy your Saturday with no Austin FC match, and then we'll have a little lazy Sunday. Hopefully, the boys bringing 3 points home to the ATX. We will be back on Monday. Sunday game, Monday pod for us here in the North End. So we'll see you back here on Monday. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. And until then, he's E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.